Welcome to the Are We Idiots Show, where we question the status quo on society's important issues while mixing in plenty of laughs along the way. Now here are your hosts, Mark Weaver and Rich Kroll.
Whoa, nay! We're back in the house. You were waiting for that one, Richie.
I
weren't
was.
You? Yeah, you knew it was coming. But hello again, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Are We Idiots Show. And as always, we have Richard Kroll and Mark Weaver here to entertain you. Richie, we are back, both of us, in the studio for the first time since March 9th, our episode 76. And boy, does it feel good.
Mark, I kind of forgot what you looked like, but then I saw the T-shirt you're wearing, and I have just bad memories from your lower taxes plus less government equals more freedom T-shirt. Probably the nerdiest T-shirt that I've ever seen in my life.
I wore it specifically for this occasion because I know that my choice for president in November is probably not going to come to fruition. We'll get into that a little later, but just to rub it in a little bit about my political beliefs. So
I feel young again. It feels like early March, and we've survived 6.5 months of COVID. So good to be back in the studio.
Yep, and we are taking precautions. We're not reckless here by being in the studio together. We have our at least 7 feet of separation, so don't worry, those of you out there. We're not being reckless. We're taking
no French kissing.
no
between
French
us.
kissing. Not this episode. But Richie, we always start with a tip of the day, and we got a great show, by the way. So make sure you stay to the end, folks. What's your tip of the day?
You know, this one's kind of a serious tip of the day. So we're coming off summer ends today, I believe. Many of us have been out in the sun, walking, gardening, going to the beach, playing golf, doing what all people do, taking advantage of the beautiful sunlight during the course of the summer. But I'll tell you what, probably one of the doctors the majority of humans rarely go see is the dermatologist. And I have always had pretty resilient skin. But I went for the first time in 5 years to a dermatologist. My wife had a little basal cell. I mean, a ton of people I know have the innocent basal cell. If you catch it early enough,
Yep.
it's like 99.9% treatable. And lo and behold, I couldn't see anywhere on my body. And I had a little basal cell. It was just confirmed. Everything's fine. But I'm like, holy cow, if I had it, then, you know, everybody I know, especially as you're getting up in age, over 35, over 40, over 50, everyone go make an appointment with your local dermatologist, and don't pick one that scans your body in 6 seconds. The reason why I stopped going, 5 years ago, I went to this lady. Maybe she was just scared of me, but she literally scanned me in 9 to 10 seconds. And I'm like, whoa. And there was people waiting, you know, like she's seeing 50 people a day. It's why she's a millionaire.
Right.
I go, how would you possibly? Because I do this for a living. I can see things. I go, wait a minute. There's no way you could have scanned me and really seen everything and give me an honest evaluation.
Right.
So we had an argument. She, so lo and behold, I've said that twice today. Lo and behold, I had something. So folks, go out and see your dermatologist. Make sure they do a full scan. It should take 2 to 5 minutes, not 2 to 5 seconds.
I am half Irish, and I have some Swiss, which is really kind of Pennsylvania Dutch, which is really German. Northern Switzerland is kind of like German. And I have had multiple basal cell, and I think squamous cell once, a little spot of that. So, yeah, I go every year. So, and I probably, being on the beach a lot in the summer probably doesn't help my cause. So, good tip, Richie. I want to thank our patrons, Mark Zlotnikoff, Eric Weaver, George Muldoon, Chris Barbie, Dr. Dave Nadler, Alvaro Puga, Rick Linares, Darren Tapp, Scott Carney, Larry Helms. And by the way, if you're out there and you have a business, I think we mentioned last episode that our downloads are going up. We're getting a lot more activity and viewership, or listenership, I guess is the better way to say it. And if you have a business that would like access to our affluent audience, send us an email, supportinglisteners@areweidiots.com. Maybe your business and our advertising rates are very inexpensive, but maybe you'd like to sponsor a show and we do a 1-minute plug for your business. You'd provide the script, and as long as it's reasonable and not not X-rated, we'll take advertisers along that front. So think about it. If you're listening to this and you have a business, you want to have access to our audience, reach out to us and maybe we can do a little advertising with your business. So, Richie, on the show, you have some Idiot of the Week nominees, and then for the majority of the show, we're going to be talking election 2020. And make sure you listen to the end because, you know, there's Nostradamus, Rich. We're better than them. We're
better.
We're way better than Nostradamus. We're going to tell you exactly what's going to happen in November. I shouldn't have chuckled because maybe people won't believe us. But no, we're going to make our predictions at the end of the show about what will happen and what we personally would like to happen. So that's what we're going to do at the end. So, Richie, can't wait to get started. You know I love the political realm, but let's do Idiots of the Week first. What are your nominees?
So, you know, I am a huge, probably obsessed football fan, especially with the NFL, and you're a huge football fan as well. And because the majority of our listeners would be male and also football fans, I'm going to throw this one out there because I watch games pretty closely, and I analyze a lot of, you know, what's great, what's stupid. This one, for me, is mind-blowing. So at the end of the Atlanta Falcons-Dallas Cowboys game, where the Cowboys made a huge comeback, the Falcons had a chance to easily put this game away by recovering an onside kick.
Which is a lot harder than it used to be, by the way, to recover an onside kick by the Cowboys.
You're absolutely correct. They changed the rules slightly against the kicking team.
Right.
Where a couple rules, you know, you have to let it go 10 yards to begin with, but now they've changed the rules on when you can release from the line. During the kick, you have to wait. So they've taken the probability from, I think it was like 1 in 20 onside kicks were converted for the kicking team. It's probably now going to be 1 in 40 or 1 in 50.
Right.
So Dallas does an onside kick, and you know it's not a live ball for the kicking team until it crosses 10 yards, but it's a live ball for the receiving team.
Right.
Unlike a punt, which only becomes live if the receiving team happens to touch it inadvertently or fumble it or whatever. 4 or 5 Atlanta Falcons, professional millionaires, watch the ball roll for 5 to 7 yards around it like it was a hot potato punt. And then as soon as it crossed 10 yards, one guy kind of moved towards it, but Dallas jumped on it and recovered it.
Yeah.
Now,
special teams coach should have been fired that next day.
Should have been fired after the game.
Right.
The coach said, that, yeah, we know the rules, but clearly they don't. I truly believe they didn't know the rules and thought that the 10 yards and that affects the kicking team also affected them. It was one of the craziest, most stupid, worst plays I've ever seen a team blow a game on. And the owner admitted it. The coach said, no, we know the rules, but we were preparing a certain way. No, absolute BS and a incredible the whole.
If you bet that game when you've been really upset,
you know, mind blowing to me. So that I am voting the head coach, the special teams coach, and the 5 players that, you know, one was an all-pro, watching that ball be recovered by Dallas. Second one, and my buddy Larry Helms in Texas, he has, I guess he hates Florida because he never gives me any idiots from Texas, but he has an endless list from Florida. This one's pretty good. A Florida man accused of trying to extort a car dealership now faces a slew of new felonies after allegedly posing as 2 federal prosecutors in an attempt to clear himself of the charges. Christian Moscow, 47, was charged with burglary, petty theft, and extortion for allegedly trying to extort $50,000 from a Daytona car dealership after he obtained the business's customer sales information. He then posed online as 2 assistant state attorneys, Daniel Fields and Andrew Urbanak using their Florida bar ID numbers. He created an email address for Urbanak that he used to try to file 2 announcement of no information motions under the prosecutor's names through the city's e-filing portal and requested that the charges against him be dropped. To create the document, Moscow used a previous filing for another person's case and edited it.
Gotta give him some creativity. It sounds pretty complex.
Oh, it's amazing. I mean, if this guy applied this to regular business
I know.
practices,
He cured cancer.
right. Prosecutors said that they learned of the fraudulent action because he had filed the wrong motion. I've been working in the system since 1980, and this is the first time I've seen something like this, said State Attorney R.J. Lariza. Moscow has since been charged with multiple felonies, including 2 counts of falsely impersonating a prosecutor, practicing law without authority, 2 counts of fraudulent use of identification, fraudulent acting as a state attorney, and uttering a forgery. So the guy went from a little bit in trouble to a lot of bit in trouble.
Right. Yeah.
If you in today's world, where we're so under the microscope, with right now everything we're doing is being taped, filmed, and
For eternity.
You're not going to get away.
Yeah.
I guarantee 10, 20, 30, 40 years ago, he would have got away with this.
Right.
Not in 2020.
Right. And his name is Moscow. So, I mean, he's obviously bad 'cause he must be Russian. They're probably interfering in our election, and he's Moscow. So there's all this association of bad things.
Exactly.
So I have to make a choice. Wow, Richie. I think we've given a lot of football-related idiots in the past. I think the referees for the Saints game a couple of years ago, I remember you nominated that. I think there were some other ones. So I'm going to go with Mr. Moscow because I admire him for his creativity. I mean, if he really wanted to steal money or defraud someone, it seems like he could do it a lot easier than all the complex things he had to go through. So I'll give him credit for a very entrepreneurial and creative crook, and therefore he gets the $1.
I'll send the $1.
So, Richie, you know me, and for better or worse, I am very interested in the political economy, and it's a weakness, I guess, and a strength. And
more of a weakness.
Yeah, probably. And, to the point where I like this stuff more than sports now. I used to be more of a sports guy, but I really get involved in this stuff. And I'm excited to do this show. So we're going to talk about the election 2020. And I'll just get it out right now, even though I'm wearing my limited government T-shirt. And you guys know, you listeners know from past episodes, including the What is Libertarian episode a few ago that we replayed. I am libertarian, and I will be voting libertarian for Jo Jorgensen. But that's where the commercial ends, because I am realistic enough to know that she probably will not be president come November 3rd, and we should focus on more reasonable and probable outcomes.
But let me give you an extra 2 minutes in props, and then also I'm going to rip your party. So don't use the word probably. Use impossibly, note zero chance. And that I'll actually say it's a shame, because if there was ever a time in our history, except maybe back in the Whig Party or when the Constitution was written 273 years ago, this would have been the time.
Of course,
right?
We said that 4 years ago, by the way.
Well,
we weren't on the podcast at that point, but
yes,
everyone was saying it then, too.
Well, they were. When you had Trump versus Hillary, people were like, oh, really? These are our 2 candidates? Okay. Geez, I wish there was a third party. But it's even more true 4 years later, right? And I'm not a Trump hater, but the people that are 100% loyal to Trump blow my mind. I do agree he doesn't get credit for the good things he's done, and it's unfair. He gets 100% shot down in the media. But holy cow, he's also, a narcissist, self-promoting, just not the kind of guy I would want to be friends with. But Biden's a whole nother thing, right? Apparently senile. I don't believe he'll get through 4 years. I don't think if he has a chance to debate, he'll have any chance to win. But the point is, I like And I learned a lot from you and your brother, Eric, about libertarian platforms. And we have our own little text group. Chris Barbie said it best. I would vote libertarian if they actually had a legitimate candidate and a legitimate campaign. And I know you and I, we've debated this back and forth about what people should or shouldn't do to educate themselves. But there was an opportunity here with some proper marketing, promotion, a really strong candidate that I think libertarians could have made some waves in 2020. Unfortunately, they won't. I'd love to see the amount of people that vote for libertarians and Joe versus Gary Johnson 4 years ago. If it was 1% or a half of 1%.
It was about 4%. 4 years ago.
I'd love to see. Does the 4% stay at 4%? Does it go to 5%? Because if it's going up 1% every 4 years, even our grandchildren won't have the opportunity to vote for the great Libertarian Party, who has great principles. I love the Constitution. I love less government. I love what they stand for. But until there's a different approach, we'll never have a true, honest, libertarian third-party candidate in the running. So you've taught us a lot, but we are still too far away.
Now you got to put up your defense. I'll just briefly say that we do disagree on the tactics or whatever, and my mantra is that both parties are bad in differing ways, granted, and that the people that continue to vote for the duopoly are just perpetuating the problem. And that's all we'll say today, because we're never going to agree on that. All right, so let's talk about what's really going to happen. So last episode I said that we had 7 weeks to go. I was wrong. It's 6 weeks to go. So it's right on our doorstep, and it's going to get crazy. We happen to be based in Pennsylvania. We're a swing state. We're already getting killed with ads and mailers. Rich has a mailer here in his name. I got like 7 days in a row. I got how bad Joe Biden was, and I'm not even registered as a Republican. But let's just level set right now. We have as of right now, actually as of yesterday, the Real Clear Politics poll. Which the Real Clear, if you're not familiar, there's all these other kind of polls, and each candidate quotes the polls that are Rasmussen used, Fox and Rasmussen, Trump usually quotes because they're, quote, more conservative polls, but there's other polls. But Real Clear is an average of the top polls. And in the top battleground states, Florida, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, North Carolina, Arizona, Biden is up in all of them. Now, he's barely up in a couple. North Carolina, he's up 0.9. And Florida, he's up 1.6. So they're within the margin of error. But I think it is a little bit ominous for Trump that he's down in all the swing state polls, because national polls really don't mean anything, Richie. The popular vote, that's a stupid line of defense that the Democrats have. Like Hillary won the popular vote. That's not how it works. It's the Electoral College. It's all the Electoral College. Play the game that's on the table. But having said that, if all 6 battleground states are now leaning Biden, that's a little bit ominous. So before we go any further, polls, Richie, do we trust the polls or not?
No, you can never trust the polls.
They're scientific.
Well, listen, I've been around prognostication and predictions most of my adult life, and most of the time the experts are wrong.
I would not say that. They are wrong, of course, but then most of the time, that's a heavy statement.
When you look at, and I'll take it to a broader sense, when you look at predictions about stocks and sports, who's going to win the game and by how much, and the weather, literally they're 50% at best, right? I mean, I wish I had a job like a weatherman where you could be wrong 5 out of 6 days and you're still waking up Monday telling us how it's going to snow or rain, and it doesn't, right?
But without them, they were wrong 80% of the time. I mean, so isn't it better than not having it?
Well, the problem is a lot of people put a lot of faith and credence into polls, and my point is you're better off never listening to a pollster about elections and sports and the weather and everything, and stocks, because you'll end up losing a lot of money and you'll lose a lot of elections. So I know the attempt is there, and with artificial intelligence, I think it's getting better. But no, you can't trust anything.
So So let me just push back a little bit. So I will agree with you on one avenue of the polls. It's who responds to these polls, right? So that to me has always baffled me. Like, who in the world is doing this? Now, supposedly these guys are probability and statistics experts, and they account for that, and so it's statistically relevant. I just don't know anyone that responds to these polls. So that I will give you. But if you believe in the science of it, which is a real science, then why would you like totally cast it out? I mean, it must have some relevance. And by the way, this line of attack that said, well, Trump, the pollsters said Trump was going to lose last time and he won anyhow, so you should throw out all polls. That's not exactly accurate. Yes, in the swing state polls, Trump did overcome, and he won barely in a few of these states, and he did have a big electoral win. But the nationwide poll said Hillary was going to win between 2% and 5%. She did, basically. And again, the popular vote means nothing, but the polls weren't that wrong last time. So I think you have to pay attention to them.
Well, but you raise a good point. What the polls told us became irrelevant. So are we polling the right things?
That could be.
Right. So that's my point. There's a lot of fun and hype and a lot of water cooler and family discussions. It's kind of fun, right? Why do we spend a week talking and analyzing about the Eagles game coming up when half the conversation and predictions and thoughts are wrong? It's exciting to think about, the next storm that's coming, or it's snow.
Right.
And
yeah,
like, it's exciting to
the
talk
anticipation
about.
is better than the result.
Yeah, what's Biden saying? What's Trump saying? What are they doing to try to beat each other? It's all about the hype and the social excitement versus more the really getting the result correct.
Okay, so the last thing we'll say about the swing state polls is, it's pretty much assumed that, and there's a demographic advantage for the Democrats, and there's more Democrats than Republicans. And the belief is that with Florida's 29 electoral votes, that's going to be the key state, that Trump has to win Florida. And in fact, as we tape this, Ruth Bader Ginsburg just died, and one of the top two contenders for the Supreme Court appointment, Trump, he is comedic. I'll give him that. He actually just came out yesterday and said, well, she is Cuban and she is from Florida and we love Florida. Like he's just so transparent about what he's thinking. Like most politicians would try to guard the fact that he would appoint someone to the Supreme Court because she's from Florida and she's Hispanic, but not Trump. He just tells it like it is. I may do it that reason. So, Florida is really key to watch. Obviously we're in Pennsylvania. That's going to be the second key state. That's 20 electoral votes. But any thoughts on the electoral votes, Florida, and kind of the swing state, the key importance of them before we move on?
Oh, absolutely. If people don't understand how this works, now where I do agree with statistics and data, they'll show something like, hey, no Republican president has ever been elected since 1960 without Ohio, right? There's stuff like that.
Right, yeah.
So if you understand those statistics, that's what I'll say the pollsters and then the candidates are looking at the data. Where should I spend my time? Who should I go after? What are the demographics to help me get elected? I don't know. Did you see the movie Irresistible?
No.
All right. So kind of a movie that flew under the radar. It's a political movie with Steve Carell and Rose Byrne. And I watched it about a month ago with my wife. And I was skeptical. Like, do I really want to watch this? I know Mark Weaver would love this movie because he enjoys politics like some people like collecting leaves and dirt and beetles. Makes no sense to me, but it excites him.
I tried to get my family to watch it, and none of them would do it.
There's a really great twist at the end, but it does get into a lot of what goes on behind the scenes with how officials get elected. Whether they're state reps, senators. And it was kind of mind-blowing. I mean, it's a little satirical, and there's a great twist at the end. It is worth watching. You learn a ton about the insanity going on behind the scenes to get people's votes.
Right.
And a lot of it has very little to do with, I want the better candidate.
Of course.
But yes, 100%. Pennsylvania, Ohio,
Michigan.
Florida. Dramatic impact on the election.
Yeah. And just for review, you have to get 270 electoral votes, and there's 538 up for grabs. So it's an absolute majority is what you need, and it should be interesting. And we'll talk about this with the mail-in voting and COVID. It's going to be. We're going to talk about kind of what is a likely happening. Let's move on, Richie, to what I think is very underreported, and that's independence. So you have a pretty strong feeling that who you're going to vote for. Many people, certainly people doing the looting and rioting, have a pretty strong feeling on who they're going to vote for. But the reality is, and it doesn't get a lot of play in the press because it's not exciting enough, is the reality is it'll be decided by 41% of registered voters are independents. And people don't know that. They think this two choices of Republican and Democrats as of right, and this is as Gallup poll, as of this month, there's 26% of registered voters are Republicans, 31% are Democrats, but 41% are independents. You never hear from them. They never get represented well in the media. But they are who decides elections. It's the person who's not paying much attention. There's like 30% of the country pays attention to politics. That's the rough estimate. And they're start thinking about it probably a week before about who they're going to vote for.
Exactly.
And it's these middle of the road people that are probably fiscally conservative and socially liberal. That's usually how they break down. And who are they going to pick? And there's all these other factors like safety and security. You see Trump now saying he's the law and order president. And people are starting to be concerned about the violence in the cities. It's the economy. It's war, if there was a war going on. It's all these other factors about how they feel in the moment about who they would trust. And so that's where it's going to come down to, and that's where I'm really of a mixed mind of like who they would go to, because I know you feel that Biden's scary, but most people see this election in polling as they either hate Trump or they love Trump. And Biden is kind of an afterthought. He's kind of like non-threatening, and he's like, maybe some people see him as a placeholder for a more radical Democrat or whatever, but the polling suggests that not many people hate Joe Biden. He's non-threatening. He's a career politician. He's been in Washington for 50 years. He's the epitome of the duopoly and the big state. So he's not threatening to me at all. I'm not even voting for him or Trump, but he's not threatening. What do you think, Rich, the average person is going to assess? How are they going to assess these two if you're one of these independents?
So I think that's a pretty accurate summary. I mean, we have to remember, right? The majority of Americans live between Cleveland and Las Vegas, across farmland. Maybe, they have a high school education, maybe not. They're the majority of the people that vote are chewing on straw, driving around in tractors, chugging Budweisers and sheep, all over they're not your. What people get caught up in and forget is we think of all the affluent in their suits and running businesses on the coasts, Boston to Atlanta and Seattle to San Diego, but that's not how America is.
Right.
So, and a lot of these people they're not reading political documents and studying programs and policies and what somebody stands for. They're reacting to propaganda and whatever gets them fired up the most in the last week.
Or how their particular life is going.
Or how their life is going.
Yeah.
Right? So I do believe a lot of this is that you love or hate Trump. I don't think Biden's threatening, but I think he's scary in a different way. Right? If you look at America, we're still supposed to be the biggest, baddest, smartest, most opportunistic country in the world. And you usually want a strong leader. When you have an 80-year-old guy that can't put two sentences together, that's frightening in a different way, right? How would this guy handle big decisions? oh, he better surround himself with really smart people. And then the first thing people think is, well, geez, what if he doesn't make it through this first a year or two? Well, then Kamala Harris is our president. So now everybody's that is actually peeling back the covers is looking at Kamala Harris. What does she stand for? An African-American woman. Does that mean she's connected to the far left liberals and does that mean we're looking at socialism? Does that mean we're looking to Bernie Sanders policy? Right? That's how the average person's looking at this. Now, I don't know that it's going that deep. I think if this election were back in April, probably Trump would have lost strictly based on the stock market was down 33%. People were getting laid off. People were dying from COVID. And some things have come back. Right?
The stock market's come back. Everything else is pretty much
the stock market's come back, but the death percentage isn't doubling or tripling since in the last couple of months. People are still getting hired. People are coming back out of unemployment. So the timing is helping Trump, but a lot of it is timing.
Right. So let me cite some statistics from a Pew poll. The last one was the Gallup poll. So this was a Pew poll just from a week and a half ago.
A P poll.
A Pew, P-E-W. So they're
Thank you.
Yeah. So this is the all-time low. Just 8% of registered voters agree with this following statement. Quote, "It is difficult to choose between Donald Trump and Joe Biden because either would make a good president." So they've asked that question, and that just goes back to your point from the very beginning. Most people see this as two bad choices. All-time low, only 8% would agree with that statement. So that means 92% think that there could be better options, all right? Now, here's what I was getting at earlier, Richie. When they polled Biden supporters and Trump supporters, the main reason that people are going to vote for Joe Biden, what do you think that would be? The primary reason, by far and away, 56%.
They don't want 4 more years of Trump.
Right. He's not Trump. When you asked the same thing of Donald Trump supporters, 19% he's not Biden. So this is my data that suggests that this is really all about Trump. And there's other reasons why they would vote, but those are far and away the biggest dispersion is Trump. And by the way, Trump cultivates this. I mean, he wants to be involved in everything. He tries to be in everyone's face every day with some kind of news. He's very good at it, by the way. He's a very good politician, even though I don't agree with him in most things. But yeah, I mean, to me, that's the biggest thing is at the end of the day, where do these independents come down? Do they hate Trump or do they like Trump? And I think that's really where the election is going to come and go. And obviously the swing states will play into it. But, if we're looking for Joe Average drinking his Budweiser on his tractor in Iowa, that's really what it's going to come down to. Is can this guy stomach Donald Trump for another 4 years? And will he vote against Trump or for him?
Yeah, I've often said it's, what's the lesser of two evils? Would you rather die by 1,000 cuts or by stoning? I mean, I think either way it's a lose-lose. Again, Trump's done some great things, but he's done a lot of not so great things. Biden, he's kind of a nothing, right? I mean, he's been involved in politics for a long time. He's never really gotten too far. He's lost before, and now people think he's senile. So really the comparison is this. Would I rather have Trump in another 4 years of what he's done, and a lot of people hate his personality. A lot of people put blame on him for increasing the federal deficit. A lot of people put blame on him for not handling COVID properly.
Check.
A lot of people put blame on him for some overly aggressive, if not conflicting foreign policy. But I'm still alive. I have a job. I have a nice house. My family's still okay. 4 years later, I personally, my family are still okay.
You lived through 8 years of Obama.
Right, but the point is, if things are so bad, I think I would feel them more. Now, on the other hand,
Yeah, you're not an hourly worker who's been laid off.
Agreed. But
Yeah.
for me personally, like I'm not seeing the tumult or demise under Trump personally. So, okay. As far as Biden, I think most people are comparing, well, what bad can happen from a potentially president going senile that may defer to the far left and take us into socialism. I've spoken to a lot of smart Democrats, and they're like, well, that's completely false. Associating him with Bernie Sanders and AOC and
Yeah,
but-
he's not. He's
but
not.
Here's
And
three
Democrat.
quotes.
By the way, Democrats are not. I mean, Democrats rejected Bernie Sanders and AOC. That is such a specious argument.
But here's,
Joe Biden is a moderate Democrat.
here's three quotes, right? And I looked at all the stuff you're getting to.
Yep.
I've thrown them all out, but I saved one. Here's where, if this is accurate, and you could put it in writing and even have dates that he was quoted on. If these are true, then this is why I can't vote for Biden. All right. On February 28th, 2020, Biden said, if you elect me, your taxes are going to be raised, not cut. On March 15th, 2020, Biden said, citizenship for 11 million undocumented folks. On last September, Biden said, I guarantee you we're going to end fossil fuel. Right? So then if you look at this, this is an advertisement. Joe Biden means seniors, small businesses, and middle-class families will pay higher taxes. His tax hike will be no better than Trump's. This means Biden would give amnesty to 11 million illegal immigrants, letting them compete for American jobs and vote. They'd be eligible for free health care, Social Security, Medicare. And his Green New Deal would spend $2 trillion destroying millions of blue-collar energy jobs. So, this is
his Green New Deal. When did he author the Green New Deal? That was AOC
right,
and
but
Bernie.
will he back the Democratic Socialist Green New Deal? So I'm comparing, in my mind, if I'm trying to simplify this, which Middle America is doing, senile socialism or radical, defiant, narcissism.
Or I will push back and say regular old socialism with under Trump, which he spent $1.5 trillion before COVID. He spent $1.5 trillion. All government spending, by the way, is taxation. So the sheer fact that Trump says he cut taxes, no, he increased taxes because when you spend, someone has to pay that at some point. He just deferred paying it. We could get way down all the list there, but anyhow, Richie, let's talk about some other issues before we go on to the Senate. So, healthcare. Healthcare, we've talked about it on many shows. At the end of the day, money's important and the economy is important and jobs are important. But at the end of the day, your health is most important and your health of yourself and your family. So healthcare always polls near the top as the most important thing for voters. Of course, with COVID this year, it's particularly important. Biden really just wants to protect Obamacare. From a healthcare perspective, he was, obviously he associates himself with that. Trump has tried to challenge Obamacare. Obviously, he didn't get the chance to overturn it. John McCain and his thumbs down. And there's court challenges going through that might challenge Obamacare. But all we're really talking about is Obamacare for Joe Biden. We're not talking about Medicare for all. I think there's certainly elements of that party that want Medicare for all, but I don't think Biden's going for that. He wants to have you. If you want to keep your private insurance, you can keep your private insurance. All through the debates, he said that. So, what do you think about health care and Joe Biden being the moderate? That's why he won the Democratic nomination, by being moderate and saying you can keep your health care if you want to.
I think that's a huge stance, right? And I think
That's not socialism.
No,
It's
no.
it's kind of socialism, but
It's kind of socialism, but I think that's what people want to hear. So if he can articulate that properly and really bang that message home with some credibility and data behind it, that's going to be a feather in his cap.
mail-in voting, Richie. We want to talk about that because I think with COVID, a lot of people are going to be mailing in their votes. And surveys have said that Democrats are much more afraid of the virus and much more afraid of voting in person than Republicans. So you can see what's going to happen on election night. The Republicans are going to be voting, and they're going to have the returns, and Trump's going to be in the lead. and they have up to 3 days after the election to count the mail-in votings that come in because of the mail. And Trump's going to declare victory on election night, yet there's going to be millions and millions of mail-in votings, which are predominantly Democratic votes, that are going to trickle in and be counted several days after the election. So to me, this is going to be a nightmare scenario for stability. What do you think is going to happen with mail-in voting and the election night and the days after?
We're going to see the hanging chads again.
This could go to the Supreme Court.
This is going to get ugly.
Yeah.
Think about it.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people that I say, hey, did you vote? Oh, no, I was busy. I had to pick up my kids from practice and I had to make dinner. Well, what do you mean? You're an American. You got to vote. Yeah. Well, in the end, my vote won't matter. Or maybe my husband and I will cancel each other out. Like, are you kidding me? So now to expect people to take the time that are on the fence or independent to fill out, yeah, I'm not going to the polls. I'm afraid to get coronavirus, but I'm going to fill out all this form and mail it in properly. Good luck. And then, are they going to fill it out right? Are they going to take the time to write something in or punch something out? And then how are they going to collect these? And if you really wanted to corrupt the system, there's a way to stuff the ballot box with stuff like this. And then if you really wanted to screw things up, people can, right? I mean, if a guy's going to take the time in Florida to pose as his own prosecuting attorney to get himself off, there are ways to really screw with the election even more than the Russians supposedly, on the internet, right? So I think it's a huge problem.
So do you think that it'll, we lived through Gore versus Bush in 2000, ended up 6 weeks later in the Supreme Court, and they decided for Bush that they couldn't proceed in Florida. And now we only have 8 Supreme Court justices, so there's not a deciding vote, so to speak, if this new person doesn't get sworn in by then, which is likely. Yeah, I think there's a very high probability. And by the way, polls have shown that Democrats will be much more upset if Trump wins rather than vice versa. So Trump voters seem to be much more realistic of the fact that he could lose. If Biden loses, and there's some nefarious things going on, I really think there could be, unfortunately, I think there could be riots again. And it's not going to be good. And I don't even know if it gets to the Supreme Court how that will go, because if there's only 8 justices, you could see a tie.
Well, if it's a close, really close race, I mean, if Trump wins by 10, 20 points or whatever, with your hanging chads and mail-in votes. But
Right.
if it's really, really close,
Which it probably will be, let's be honest.
I expect it to be Hillary Clinton-esque close. Then, yeah, a couple 100,000 write-in votes could make the difference. And Trump's even said, if that's how it's going to go down, where I win, and then 3, 5, 7 days later I'm losing, I'm not leaving the White House, and I'll bring in the cops and the military, and they're going to keep me here.
Yeah, well, that's not going to happen. But I do think it could, and let's be honest, he's a very small human being. He's not going to take the high road. He's just not. He's going to sow discontent. He does it every day. He's very divisive. And
I like divisive.
Yeah,
You're turning.
Divisive. But anyhow, he's not going to be big about it regardless of the way it goes. All right, Richie, so we have to move on because we're getting long in the tooth. Last thing before we go into the Senate, inequality. And I know you have some strong feelings about this. We've talked about it on other shows, so we don't need to go into the financial and social justice aspects. But that's a big issue, especially with Biden supporters that of course, the stock market, recovering, you mentioned it earlier, that just hurts inequality, and it's just the perception that the rich are getting richer and the retail workers and all the hourly workers are getting screwed. But what do you think happens with it, as far as inequality? You think that's a big part of this, or you think they're just the radical fringe that don't really mean that much in the aggregate?
All these rioting and looting is not taking place with the majority of the left. Right. It's a small percentage of radicals, but they're getting all the press, they're getting all the news, so the perception is it's wider spread. However,
it's a turnoff for regular people watching that.
It's a huge turnoff.
Yeah.
But forever, the poorer class or the less fortunate class or lower class that's always looking for an edge or a handout or some help. Sometimes rightfully so, very often not. You know, it's a selling point that, under Trump, if you're laid off or whatever the case may be, and you're worse off than you were 4 years ago, the Democrats are going to come in and save the world. And,
Right.
I think if they hammer that point with unemployment at historical lows since the Great Depression, that it's going to help that side of the vote on the Democratic side.
Right. Yeah. It's always easier to be out of power and say you're going to do great things when you don't know if you can pull it off or not. And then Trump's tact is really just, hey, these people are radicals. They're gonna ruin your way of life in the suburbs. I think is what he said. And so we'll see if people believe that.
Well,
All right.
if you're not happy with your situation today, you're going to be way more miserable 1, 2, 3, 4 years down the road.
Yeah, and that's a tough sell. Usually voters, and again, not the extremes on either side, usually voters blame the person in power if their life's not going well. All right, so let's move on to the Senate, because I think most people agree that the House will stay in Democratic hands, and Nancy Pelosi will continue to be the Speaker. But the Senate could be up for grabs, and we'll talk. Right now, the GOP holds a 53-47 advantage. But they are defending 23 Senate seats this year versus 12 Democrats. So the way it worked out is that a lot of Republicans are up for a vote, and all the Democrats need is 3 net seats to win. Just briefly, Alabama, Arizona, and Colorado are seen as the most likely to flip. 2 of those are Republican, 1 is Democrat. And by the way, in Alabama, Mr. Football, the Republican facing the Democrat Doug Jones is Tommy Tuberville, the former Auburn coach.
Wow.
He's the Republican nominee there. In Arizona, Martha McSally is the incumbent Republican. She's running against Mark Kelly, who's the astronaut who spent a year in space, Gabby Giffords' husband. And in Colorado, Cory Gardner is a moderate Republican. He's going up against John Hickenlooper, who ran for the Democratic nomination for president. Other states in play, North Carolina, Tom Tillis, Susan Collins in Maine, Joni Ernst in Iowa, Sonny Perdue in Georgia, and Kelly Loeffler in Georgia, by the way. And Lindsey Graham in South Carolina probably won't get unseated because he's very powerful, but this guy, Jamie Harrison, is running very strong against Lindsey Graham, and there's a potential upset there. So, Richie, we're at that point in the show. We have to start doing our predictions of what will happen and what you want to happen, what you personally want to happen, and then what will actually happen with the Senate. Does it stay in Republican hands or flip to the Democrats, and with the president? So any comments on the Senate before you give your predictions?
No.
It's a big deal because, people focus on the president, and the president does things, but with the separation of powers and the power that the Senate has, we're seeing it right this week with the Supreme Court nominees and whether or not that goes forward or not. The Senate is a huge, huge deal, and you'll hear that.
I agree. I kind of like the balance of power, checks and balances, where if you have a Democratic president, you have a Republican Senate, and vice versa. So sometimes things can change dramatically when it's all on one side that can never be challenged. But go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say, what's your prediction?
Well, let me.
Can I drum roll?
Wait, I have a prediction, but I have a hot off the press.
Oh, okay.
So, Havertown business legend,
Okay.
Tim Kardish,
Okay.
let me know this fact. He's hot off the press. If we were to run into a very bizarre situation where we can't really decide who's president,
Constitutional crisis.
and it goes to the Supreme Court, and with 8, we can't figure it out at that level.
Right.
Guess who becomes our president?
Well, the House picks.
No,
Who?
Nancy Pelosi.
Well, I thought the House picks the president. So
I apparently
Okay.
by default
Okay.
in this one odd situation,
I have to check
she
that.
would get the nomination by default.
I wonder if that business legend in Havertown is also a constitutional expert, because I thought the House selected in that scenario.
Well,
But
he threw it
I'll
out
check
there.
I'll check it.
It's
I'll
worth
check.
checking. Here's my prediction.
We'll fact check it. Yeah, I
I'm
want
gonna
to
keep
do a
it-
little drum roll. Okay, Richie's predictions.
Because the average American and the majority of Americans really don't make their decision to the last 2 weeks, there's going to be some debates. You're
Yeah.
going to see Biden versus Trump.
Right.
I believe there are enough people that would like to vote for somebody other than Trump. It's going to come down to the debates. If Biden craps all over himself and can't answer a sentence coherently,
Which is possible.
and he comes off as a completely, senile imbecile on the American stage,
That's a subjective assessment, by the way. But
if it happens,
right.
I think then that Trump will get elected. If Biden is articulate and smooth and he's calm when Trump gets heated up and he has great answers and he seems like he's for the American people and he's not divisive and divisive where he wants to bring the Democrats and Republicans together for what's best for the American people, I think Biden will get elected.
So that's a hedge. I need you to go out on a limb and tell me what you think is going to happen.
Biden is going to puke all over his suit
Okay.
in public, and then the majority average person will say, I can't vote for that guy, and I'm going to choose the lesser of two evils, Donald Trump.
Trump will win. And who retains the Senate?
Democrats.
Okay. So Democrats are going to Democrats are going to control both houses of Congress, and Trump's going to be the president.
Yes.
And that's what you think is going to happen, and what you want to happen. Or
No, I honestly don't know what I want. I wanted to vote libertarian and have a real third party
We're not going into that again.
make America great again.
No, what I want is for no government to be so strong, because then if you give them a gun,
I'll say
they'll
this.
use it against us.
I'm transparent. I voted because of you and all your propaganda. I voted libertarian 4 years ago just to make a statement. It didn't get me anywhere. I was leaning towards
It got you somewhere,
It got
deeper in a hole.
deeper in a hole. Thank you. I can't see myself voting for Biden, which means I'm going to have to vote for Trump. I'm more afraid of a Democratic presidency than I am Trump.
Disgusted by
4
Trump.
years.
Okay. So my prediction is I'm not going to do any caveats or qualifiers like Richie. My prediction is this: that there are more I'll call them reasonable people. In court the standard is what would a reasonable person assume? For the jury, that's the charge of the jury, is a reasonable person qualifier. So I believe that Joe Biden is so non-threatening, and if you want to call him nice or a reasonably nice person, he's obviously got plenty of flaws, like we've already talked about. And I think in the end, when you throw out the polls of the radical leftists and the radical Trumpsters, that enough, quote, reasonable people will just say, hey, I'm tired of this constant Trump, drama. And I think Biden will win, barely. I do think the Republicans will pull it out and win the Senate. And that is basically my hope, by the way, that because if you're a libertarian, you want minimal government. And the best way to get minimal government with the two-party system is to have one person control the House and the Senate, or what, a mixed control between the executive branch and the legislative branch. So I'm hoping that the Republicans maintain control of the Senate, that they pretend that they're interested in fiscal sanity, because we know they aren't, but they'll pretend for 4 years under Joe Biden, and they'll stop all legislation, stop all tax increases, and just keep government as small as possible, although it's much bigger than it should be. So
Did you smoke crack during the show that I missed?
Why? What's wrong with that?
Well, the things you're hoping for are kind of funny.
Why? Hoping that nothing gets done? That's a good thing. That's usually when the best things happen. When they say we're doing good work for the people, that's usually the worst things that happen. So anyhow, all right, Richie. So as we close the show, any thoughts and other comments before we do so?
As always, you are a pleasure to work with, especially with political discussions. But please don't wear that T-shirt ever again.
I'm hoping that this is the case. Limited government, more freedom. All right, Richie, so next show, we're hoping to get one more in before the end of September. As I said, we're doing really well with downloads, and spread the word, everyone, by the way. Pass it on, share, subscribe, download, do all that thing. Tell a friend, because we want to get one more show in, and we're thinking, well, I won't divulge. We'll talk about it. It'll be a great show. And as always, please remember, if what you see or hear sounds idiotic, then we're just the guys to help you sort it out. See y'all next episode. Take care.
Thank you for listening. Please download, subscribe, share, and review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Play, and also our website.